Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and our long-running series, The Unported Playlist, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. Today we have Steel Gunner from Namco, released in 1990 on the System 2 hardware. And if you can't already tell, it is a light gun shooting game, and if you don't know anything about the channel, that is my favorite genre of arcade games. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But I won't lob a grenade at you if you don't sign up. But what is this game? Well, to me, it is a hybrid game between Time Crisis and Point Blank. Now, granted, both of those series would come much later than Steel Gunner, but this has the vibe of both. And if I'm comparing it to those two incredible franchises from Namco, you know this game has got to be good. And it is absolutely spectacular, and it's such a disappointment this never got ported home to any console. But considering it released in 1990 and probably wouldn't have run well on the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, it 100% makes sense as to why. And there is a Steel Gunner 2, a sequel in fact, that I will probably talk about in the next couple months because one good game begets another. But I just love everything that the Namco System 2 hardware does with all of the different sprite scaling and perspective tricks. Of course this is pure 2D, but it always gives you the illusion of being 3D, and the fact that the screen space moves left to right, forward and backwards, it really gives you a depth and ability to traverse the world even though you're on rails and really feel like you are in fact there. And for 1990 this would have been spectacular technology because nothing in the home market was doing this. But I mean, how can you go wrong with an awesome light gun game, and how can you go wrong with Namco? I love the art, but the action is where it's at. Steel Gunner is an intense game, and some may even describe it as slightly cheap. If I was putting quarters into this machine, it would definitely take me a lot of money to see the ending, and I am playing this on normal difficulty. But without money involved, it is just so much fun to play this game. There's projectiles all over the screen, enemies are popping out, and it runs at a blisteringly fast pace, a pure 60 frames a second. And I do love that you get these little intercut sequences between levels too. It gives you just enough story to wonder what's going on, but not too much because it's an arcade game, and you really want to play for like maybe 20 minutes or so. Because story in an arcade game is like plot in a you-know-what film. It definitely needs to be there, but no one's interested in it. They just want to get to the action. But all jokes aside, and I think that was a very good one in fact, this game is just straight up action, and that's what I love about it so much. I love a game that from start to finish doesn't let up. Sure, you get a little break here and there in between levels just to tally up your accuracy, but other than that, once a level starts, you have your finger on the trigger the entire time. Now this game does commit one cardinal sin, one that I always mention on these videos if it does it. It has a low life indicator. There's going to be a siren if you're almost dead. I absolutely hate that in arcade games. In Steel Gunner you sinned and you did that as well, so that is a strike against it. But honestly, what isn't a strike is everything else. This game is just straight up fun, and because it's two-player like every arcade game, you're going to have more fun if you have a second player. In some instances, it feels like this game was specifically designed around having a second player play with you, because there's so much stuff on the left and the right hand side of the screen, and it is all shooting at you at once. It's almost impossible not to take damage as a solo player. So if you have a friend next to you, I 100% recommend this game because it is just such a ton of fun. And I just love the graphics as well. This sprite scaling, the Namco System 2 hardware did an excellent job of moving sprites around the screen, and Steel Gunner is no different. It is from start to finish so fun just to see all this perspective shifting, these pillars that scale in real time, and there isn't really a floor or ceiling, it's a blank texture, but it has the look of one, so it does put you into that 3D screen space as close as it can get for the hardware at the time. And that's 1990, that's 1 year after 1989, and that was a really long time ago. When I say this game has inspirations for Point Blank, it's not just the cardboard cutout kind of graphical style to these sprites. I swear this next character in the middle is gotta be either Dr. Dan or Dr. Don from Point Blank. But this game looks incredible, the action is intense and spectacular, but the soundtrack is quite awesome too, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds. I'll come back and tell you more about Steel Gunner 2. Just an awesome soundtrack, and it kind of has that jazziness that Point Blank would go on to use. Now, of course, in Point Blank, it's going to be a lot more cartoony jazzy, but Steel Gunner definitely makes me think of Point Blank, both in the presentation, the fact that Dr. Dan or Dr. Don are definitely in the game, and the fact that it sounds so similar as far as the musical choices are concerned. But moving on further into the game, you will see that we have a missile counter. You can use those if you don't want to get hit by regular enemies, but I can't recommend enough to save them for the bosses. The bosses in this game are quite hard, but if you save enough of those missiles like I did here, I saved 4, it's relatively easy to take a lot of their health down all at once. And I do love that pseudo 3D perspective as that arm comes out. This can scale sprites so well. I would put it up against something like a Sega board that was a sprite scaler as well, and I would say Namco had really good hardware. Sega always gets the credit for the super scaler technology and all of that sprite scaling, but Namco is doing a really damn good job with it as well. But you will see here, we're already into the final stage, and Dr. Don there, or maybe Dr. Dan, hard to tell, is yelling at you to go solve things. And we move into this cityscape in a nighttime with fire in the background. This level's like a third of the game, and it is from start to finish just wild. It gets hard here. There's so much stuff on screen at once. There's so many projectiles that you need to make sure you don't get hit by, and some of the bullets are auto hits. If that enemy shoots, you're going to get hit by it. Other things like grenades or the rockets here, you have a chance to shoot them out of the sky, and you need to be on top of that, because once you get to the later area of this stage, there'll be 15-20 bullets on screen at once, and you need to really manage them out. And that's why I say if you have a second player, this game is going to be a lot easier to play, because one of you can take the left-hand side of the screen, and one of you can take the right. And you'll see in classic arcade fashion, they start using bosses from previous levels as mid-stage enemies just to kind of slow you down a little bit more. Because this is an arcade game, they do want their quarters, and they definitely have to get a few more credits out of you before you're able to see the final boss. But if you're emulating the game, credits don't really matter. Although this isn't the most expensive PCB to buy, and honestly, I'm surprised I haven't added it to my collection yet, because I love original arcade hardware, especially if it's in the Lightgun genre. And honestly, after this voiceover, I may very well go put up a wanna buy post looking for this game, because it's 100% the type of game I want on my shelf, so I can take it out and play it when I feel like it. But again, back to that Point Blank reference, if you take a look at the background here, even though this game was made long before Point Blank existed, that flatness to those buildings, that kind of western looking theme, is a lot of what Point Blank is doing, and it's just so interesting that I can see that game here. The developers at Namco clearly were working in this genre, and then somewhere down the line they got the idea for Point Blank. But I love that massive sprite in the background with those big chunky pixels that's crawling around, and we're going to be fighting him very, very shortly, and it's just a blast. I mean, those legs coming down, crushing those cars, everything is so much fun. And then you shoot up this building here for the final battle in the game, and you get this crab looking mech. And that's what I said, sometimes you're going to get 15 to 20 projectiles at screen at once, and hitting all of those before they hit you kind of actually feels unfair. I would say the final boss of this game is quite cheap. Even if you had a second player, you need to save those missiles to be able to knock them all off the screen at once, but you only get so many missiles, so honestly not taking damage here would be extremely difficult. I can't imagine doing a 1 credit clear of this game, but maybe somebody out there's done it. I'll have to look it up after I'm done with the video. But right when you think you've finally beaten the boss, he pops back up and gets right in your face, and you have to have a gunfight at close range, and you start to notice as you shoot him, he's actually a robot. Is that part of the story? Not really. It's probably just a way to make sure people weren't too offended by the violence, because shooting a Terminator, clearly what that is a lot better than shooting a human being. And honestly, a human being definitely couldn't take that many shots. But he pops up one last time before he explodes, and just his torso and legs walk at you as you unload your clip onto him. But yeah, that is Steel Gunner. It is a spectacular game. Maybe you've heard about it, maybe you haven't. Leave me a comment down below and tell me, did you know this existed? And leave me a comment too and see if you feel like this might be related to Point Blank in some sort of way. But the credits are awesome as well. But if you've never played this game before and it looks slightly interesting, trust me, you gotta go play it. Especially because at the end, you get a hug from Doc Brown. Bye bye.